I can't do anything else now. I'm famished.
Then let's go have a snack. That should help.
What does the man mean?
I hope you had a nice and relaxing walk.
I did. The paths through the campus were covered with falling leaves and it was gorgeous.
What does the man mean?
What did Professor Randall say about our lab reports? Do they have to be typed?
He'll accept handwritten reports as long as they aren't illegible.
In that case, I guess I'd better type mine.
What does the woman mean?
I need a printer for my computer. I knocked mine off the table and it broke.
Then I think you're in luck. I saw a used one like yours for sale in the student newspaper just this morning.
According to the woman, what is for sale?
We've gone over these figures 3 times and they still don't come out right.
I wish I had brought my calculator. It would have been a lot easier.
And we'd be done by now.
What does the woman mean?
Had you been planning to give Karen a ride to the rehearsal?
Not if she hadn't asked.
What does the man imply about Karen?
Where did you get this book bag? I've never seen anything like it.
Isn't it wonderful? It holds everything I need and keeps it all organized. I came across it at the university bookstore. You could get one there for yourself.
What does the man say about the book bag?
Jim's already back from today's field trip to the museum.
Oh, he is? How did he like the trip?
He said that it wasn't his cup of tea.
What does the woman say about Jim?
Which brand of paint do you think we should get?
How about this one? It costs a little bit more, but it's never supposed to peel, crack, or fade. You just paint once and it lasts for a lifetime.
Anything that claims to do all that must be overrated.
What does the man think about the paint?
I'm sure the professor said to read only chapters 5 and 7 for tomorrow.
So we don't have to read chapter 6, too.
What had the woman assumed?
Matthew has decided to withdraw his nomination as student body president.
That's too bad. No one is more capable than he is.
Yeah, I know. I was really hoping he would run.
What does the woman say about Matthew?
I'm meeting my roommate tomorrow. I wonder what he's like.
Haven't you met him yet?
No, he lives on the West Coast. He's flying in tomorrow morning.
Do you know anything else about him?
Yeah, he's a freshman like us, but he's majoring in physics, and he has a scholarship. That's about it.
Sounds like a genius to me. I'm sure he'll be nice. Don't worry.
Hope you're right.
What does the man sound apprehensive about? What do the roommates have in common?
That was a great answer you gave in literature class.
The answer about the red badge of courage?
Yes, your answer gave me an insight into the novel that I had never had before.
It's one of my favorite American novels. It has a lot to say about the nature of war and the concept of courage in the face of war, or in everyday life for that matter. Every time I read the novel, I see something new.
Oh, so this wasn't the first time that you read it?
Not at all. More like the fourth or fifth time.
What had the students probably just been doing? Why was the woman impressed with the man? What can be learned about the man from this conversation? Listen to a discussion by a group of students taking a zoology course. The discussion is on land tortoises.
Now we can move on to discuss the next part of the chapter, the part on land tortoises.
Yes. The land tortoises are the tortoises that don't live in the water, although they may live near the water. They only come to water to drink or bathe. Look here in the book. Here's a picture of one of the 40 kinds of land tortoises.
Land tortoises are the ones that live to such long ages, aren't they?
Yes. My favorite part of the chapter was the part that was about how long land tortoises can really live. How old can they live to be?
It's not really known for sure. There are lots of traditional stories about tortoises that lived for hundreds of years.
I do remember hearing when I was young about tortoises that were supposed to be 1 to 200 years old. But for many of these stories, there are no accurate records, so it's impossible to verify whether or not they're true. Well, how old is the oldest tortoise on record? Do you know?
In the chapter I just read, it said that the oldest tortoise, whose age can be verified to some extent, is the one known as Marion's tortoise.
I read that Marion's tortoise was 152 years old.
Actually, I think the book said that it was at least 152 years old, but was probably older.
So they're not really certain how old Marion's tortoise really was when it died? What verified information is known about Marion's tortoise?
A French explorer named Marion de Fresnay captured an adult tortoise in 1766, and he transported the tortoise to the island of Mauritius in that year.
When did Marion's tortoise die? Are there authentic records?
Historians are satisfied with the authenticity of the records that show that Marion's tortoise died in 1918.
How do they know it was the same tortoise? Could it have been a different tortoise that died there in 1918?
Tortoises don't occur naturally on Mauritius, so Marion's tortoise was the only tortoise on the island of Mauritius.
And this tortoise had been on the island of Mauritius for 152 years when it died. That's right. Here, let me clarify this for you. Marion's tortoise arrived in Mauritius in 1766 and died in 1918, so that would make it at least 152 years old. But didn't you say that the tortoise that was captured and brought to Mauritius by Marion de Fresnay was an adult when it was captured?
Yes. So Marion's tortoise was known to have lived for 152 years on Mauritius. But because it was an adult when it was captured in 1766, and it's unclear how old it was at that time, it could have been considerably older than 152 years when it died. Maybe 180 years or more. 200 years old for this type of tortoise is not inconceivable.
So a tortoise living to the age of 200 may be possible, but there are no verified records of such a tortoise.
Exactly.
What is true about land tortoises? What is known for certain about Marion's tortoise? What does the man say about the likelihood of a tortoise living to the age of 200? Identify the graph that represents what is known about the lifespan of Marion's tortoise. Listen to a lecture in a history class. The professor is talking about the Roman military.
Good evening, class. As you know, we've been discussing Roman military history. Before we discuss specific battles fought by the Roman army, we will look at some of the customs of the Roman military. Chapter 2 of your text should have given you some insight about the regulations governing the Roman army. Today, I would like to tell you about one of the tests the Romans used to determine if their soldiers would fight as foot soldiers on the front lines or as archers behind the front lines. Roman soldiers were required to undergo certain tests to determine their ability to perform as soldiers. One of these tests was simply to count the stars in the constellation the Big Dipper. This test determined the acuity of their vision. Look at this picture of the Big Dipper. You will notice that it is formed by 7 stars. The star at the bend of the handle of the Big Dipper is called Mizar. Mizar is a binary star. If you look closely, there is a second star called Alcor next to Mizar. If a Roman soldier's eyesight was good enough to see Alcor, he could fight as an archer. If he could not see Alcor, he would fight on the front lines as a foot soldier. This test for eyesight was used not only by the Romans, but also other groups of people for hundreds of years. Interestingly, over time, more people have been able to pass the test. Some attribute this fact to survival of the fittest and microevolution of the eye. Survival of the fittest refers to the idea that those who are strongest or have some other physical or mental advantage will be more likely to survive. For Roman soldiers, this was certainly true. Soldiers with better eyesight were not on the front lines. Those with worse eyesight were sent to the front lines and, more often than not, killed on the front lines. Archers stood a better chance of survival and were around to father children, who would tend to have better eyesight than those who failed the test. Today, most people can see the binary star in the Big Dipper with the naked eye, so it is no longer a very good test for keen eyesight. That's all for today. Tomorrow we will begin discussing the military exploits of the Romans. Please read Chapter 3 of your text before class so you'll be familiar with the primary battles they fought.
Why were Roman soldiers asked to count the stars in the Big Dipper? According to the lecture, what two statements describe possible outcomes from the Roman eyesight test? How does the term survival of the fittest relate to this lecture about the Roman military? Identify Alcor in the picture of the constellation the Big Dipper. What will be discussed in the next lecture? Listen to a talk in a geography class. The professor is talking about the formation of craters.
Today we're going to be talking about the geological formation called a crater, which is a bowl or elliptical-shaped depression in the surface of the Earth, or in the surface of any other celestial body for that matter. We're going to be looking at two tremendously different types of craters. One type of crater is formed by internal forces during volcanic activity that begins deep inside the Earth. The other type of crater is formed by an external force from the impact of a meteor with the surface of the Earth. Do you know which kind of crater is more common on Earth, volcanic craters or impact craters? Why don't you think about that as we're going over the information in the lecture, and we'll return to that point later. The first type of crater that we're going to look at has been formed as a result of volcanic activity. Volcanic craters are actually formed in two different ways, either from collapse or from explosion. Let's look first at a collapse crater. The crater in this photo is Crater Lake in the Cascade Mountains in southern Oregon. Geologists believe that Crater Lake was once part of a towering volcanic mountain. They have named this mountain of yesteryear Mount Mazama. Sometime around 7,000 years ago, a tremendous mass of lava flowed out of the mountain, and the unsupported peak of the huge mountain collapsed, leaving a crater 6 miles wide. Now we'll look at the other type of volcanic crater, an explosive crater. This type of crater is formed not because of an inward collapse, but because of a sudden and forceful explosion. Can you recognize the mountain in this photograph? This is, of course, Mount St. Helens, or actually the crater that remains atop Mount St. Helens. It was during the violent volcanic eruption on May 18, 1980, that tons of ash and debris were blown into the atmosphere and a mile-wide crater was formed. That's all we're going to discuss about volcanic craters. Now we'll move on to the other radically different type of crater, the kind that has been caused by the impact of an external force such as a meteor. The crater in this photograph was caused when a meteor collided with the Earth. This crater, which is located in north-central Arizona, has the rather appropriate name of Meteor Crater. This huge crater is more than 3/4 of a mile across. Because it was not formed during volcanic activity, the walls of the crater are composed of sedimentary rather than volcanic rock. The meteor that caused the crater was almost totally destroyed on impact, although a number of tiny fragments of the meteor have been found in the vicinity of the crater. Let's return now to the question that I posed at the beginning of the lecture. Which type of crater, from volcanoes or from impact, is the most common on Earth? If you thought that the answer was volcanic craters, then you are right. At least 80 impact craters are known to exist on Earth. However, this number is far lower than the number of volcanic craters that exist on our geologically active planet. That's all for today. See you next week.
Which did the lecturer not mention as a possible cause of craters? Which accurately describes the formation of the craters discussed in the lecture? What are the diameters of the craters below? What is Mount Mazama? What happened to the meteor that caused Meteor Crater?